be aware of the languages that your students speak, and yeah, make it a strength, to really promote different languages. And you're all language learners yourselves, so that shouldn't be too tricky. And I'm a language teacher, so yeah, languages is just part of just part of what we do. So other key principles are, I can't see the beginning of mine. Your differentiating of your instruction, making sure that you use a variety of different instructional strategies, so that your students are able to engage with the content. Promote critical thinking, empower thinking in your students, but mostly we're looking for that social justice and equity. We're promoting social justice and equity. And lastly, in terms of culturally responsive pedagogy, we're looking at involving our families and communities, and introducing them into the classroom, and where you can. So inclusive learning means that your students will feel like they are seen and heard and valued. It makes them feel good. It makes them want to learn, and hopefully then they've got a positive self-identity. Most of all, in terms of this unit, we want to challenge biases, dismantle stereotypes, and foster a more equitable and just society. So we're now going to look at some of the pedagogy. Now, you might have noticed, if you've looked at the original slides, that these slides, I've put some topics in. So because I found that the slides were, they were just in one big bulk, and there's actually quite a few subsettings. So I've just organized them. So this next section is based on Yuri Bronfenbrenner, and Bronfenbrenner focuses on the student at the center, and he talked about the ecological systems theory. So if you can refer to that, that would be good. And let's have a look at it in a little bit more detail. So we're going back to theory of learning, and basically what Bronfenbrenner says is that the child is developing and they are right at the center, and those people, there are systems around them that affect them. And basically the family is the first section, and has the greatest influence of the child. But unfortunately, or fortunately, school is a close second. So quite often we might see our students for just as much time as they see their parents in the evening. So that personal relationship and the relationship between children and adults is what we call biodirectional. So students' behaviour can affect us, and we can also affect or improve children's development and their behaviour as well. So it's biodirectional. So this is what Bronfenbrenner is suggesting. He's suggesting that the child is right in the middle there, where it says individual, and then the biggest impact is the microsystem. So we've got microsystem, mesosystem, and exosystem, and we are part of the microsystems as school, just like our students' peers are, just like the parks and the clubs and the sporting environments that they find themselves in. Health services come under the microsystem as well, and there's the family. So family are right there. And then as you go out, there's less of an effect on the student, but still there's an effect. So you can have a look at the meso and the exosystems there. So you've got your three systems, micro, meso, and exo, and then he also adds the larger socio-cultural context, which is the macro system, and then lastly the chrono system, which is all of those systems interchanging and developing over time. And within each system, there are roles and norms and rules, and all of them have an effect on the student. But the closer the system is to the child, then the more direct influence there is. So parents have direct influence, but we are not close. When we're close behind, we are in that microsystem with the family in the classroom. What else have we got? Then we've got, further out, we've got society and governments and laws have an effect as well, but not as much. So this is the chrono system, which is basically dynamics that change over time. And that's all of the experiences. So think about our students that have maybe come from overseas, our students that might be refugees. Their system also consists of their experiences that they had before they came to school. So their whole lifetime experiences. Oops, I've now lost my slides again. I am so good at losing my slides. Okay, I am going to, should probably have my glasses on, that might help as well. I'm going to show captions so that that's helpful to you. And I am going to, sorry everyone, this, everything's, I'm scared of touching my device now because I'm scared I keep losing things. Okay, I am going to. You can probably still see, can't you? You can still see the slides, but I can't see my slides. Apps, documents, transcript, show captions, host tools. Hold on. No, I am really struggling now. What am I sharing with you? Can you see the slides? Yes, you can see the slides. I've got them back. Oh dear, there's no hope for me. Okay, so basically that's the ecological system from Bronfenbrenner. So that's theory. Let's move on now to role of the teacher. Now, I really want to close some windows on the side of my screen, but I daren't close them in case I lose anything else. So maybe try and move things across. That's better. Okay, so let's look at the role of the teacher. Now, this is the challenge because I think as you guys come into teaching, what you'll notice is you might have a passion for science, you might have a passion for digital technologies. I had a passion for French when I first started out, and we go into the classroom, and that's what we think our job is. We think that's all about our learning area, but actually, there's so much more to it than we thought. And knowing our students and knowing their families is part of the challenge. So Carrington here in 2002 says that our biggest challenge at the moment is the configuration of new families. And that means different cultural backgrounds. And we need to make sure that we don't think of families from a nostalgia or a deficit model. So that means, for example, I've been teaching for 30 odd years. I need to make sure that I don't look back over the last 15 years and say, oh, I remember when families had two parents and there was a male and there was a female. That would be like a nostalgia or a deficit models. We need to look at our configuration of our families with a positive outlook, as in we have a variety of students and they have a variety of backgrounds, and that's a positive thing. So part of our role is to recognize that our students come in all different shapes and sizes, different backgrounds. So we need to be forward thinking, we need to be respectful, we need to be inclusive. We need to embrace diversity is the message that we're sending. But here are some of the roles that we need to play. So we need to be culturally responsive, so aware of the cultures in our class. We need to be inclusive, making sure that we don't have students on, on the boundaries or on the periphery, that we're including everybody. We need to encourage critical thinking. And I know certainly in Australia, we definitely don't see children as vessels to fill with information and fill with knowledge. We believe that our students should be thinkers and that they should be involved in the learning process. We need to provide support. We need to provide equity. We need to provide social and emotional support and development. And this really is coming to the forefront in secondary schools at the moment, where we have students that maybe are at risk of self-harm. We have students that are at risk of flight, as in not flying, but, as in they're going to run away. We have students that may need to talk to us. They may need to tell us things about their home life, and we need to be able to listen to them, support them in a non-judgmental way. And that's big, that's the roles here that are on the screen are nothing to do with your learning area. These are extra roles that teachers have. And so hopefully, we're seeing diversity generally as a strength within our diverse society. But yes, the role of the teacher, I think, over the years has grown. And maybe we might not think that we have the skills to support our students. I mean, certainly in schools that I've worked in, students are coming with mental health issues and, are struggling to get to school in the morning. So, what does culturally responsive look like? Well, here are the 8 competencies. Um, so, for example, in your learning area, you might find that one of these areas is really easy to incorporate. So, let's take maths, for example. You're a maths teacher, bringing real world uh, issues into the classroom. Hopefully, you can do through maths. So you're not just doing pure maths, but you're actually relating your maths to the real world. Then we've got reflect on one's through one's own cultural lens. So we all bring a cultural lens with us, and we need to open up conversations about culture. And then there's another one here that's got communicate in linguistically and culturally responsive ways. So the way we talk. So, for example, I've got what's it called? The script at the bottom, so that everyone can read. If I'm speaking too fast for you, we need to be aware that if we have learners who might need to read rather than listen, that they can. What else have we got there? Promote respect for student differences, recognize and redress bias in the system. So looking at the whole school system, are you standing up for your students? Is the system biased towards one type of student than another? So basically, we've got now chance to talk about what do you think you could do in your classroom, and maybe what do you think you might struggle with. So, for example, bringing the real world into the classroom. As a former teacher, previously I've had to talk to our students about some students in some countries don't have drinking water. Whereas in our classrooms, our students have bottles of water on the desk. Water is not an issue for us. So, you have a great opportunity as HAS teachers to be looking at real world problems. Maths, you definitely have too. We were talking today in my face-to-face lecture about the wildfires that are currently burning in Europe, but also in Canada. And it's one of the challenges that we have in Australia as well, come summer. And, in terms of science, maybe science and HAS have a really good opportunity for, looking at the real world problems within the learning area. What else have we got there? Collaboration with families and the local community. Well, as an English teacher, we didn't invite families in, but we definitely did bring community of authors into our schools. And families did come in when I was teaching textiles so that I could get some help with threading needles and helping students set up their sewing machines. So have a think about your learning area. Which of these competencies, and you can put it in the chat. That's if I can find the chat. If I open the chat so I can see it, maybe you could put in the chat some of the opportunities that you might have in your learning area to use these competencies. And maybe I'll give you 5 minutes to think about it. Does that sound good? So whenever you're ready. Or you can either speak them or you can put them in the chat. That's fine. You're not my chattiest group, are you? So have a think about your learning area. Have a think about some of the curriculum areas, and can you see any links with these competencies? because we want to be competent, we want to be culturally responsive. Where do you think it's going to be the easiest for you? And it might come down to your values. So for me, I find that Australian students have either done lots of traveling or they've done none. And those students that have never left Australia really don't understand the real world problems that we do have. And our students don't tend to watch the news. So, do our students even know about the wars that are going on? Do our students know about the wildfires that I was just talking about? In terms of cultural responsive teaching, do we have students, say, from Iran who are in our classrooms? And how do we open up conversations that could be tricky? So I'm going to come back to that one if you're struggling with it. And we're going to move on to quality teaching framework. So this is the New South Wales framework, but I wouldn't worry about it. We don't need a WA quality teaching framework. This one's good, but basically it's quality teaching. So this should be a revision section here. So in the quality teaching model, which is the New South Wales one, you've got the link there. It basically makes us future focused, and it's a focus on quality of practice. So it's encouraging us to reflect on what we do, to be innovative, to be critical and creative thinkers, to use technology in our teaching, to think about how our learning environments can be flexible. So can you take the students out of the classroom? Can you join the next class? For a debate, can you go on to the oval? If you're a science teacher, can you do some experiments around the campus? And then when you've finished a program of work, have you evaluated it? What would you do again that's the same? What would you definitely not need to cover? What would you take out of your program? So reflect on your teaching and whether it had an impact. Then building collaborative practices. So are you collaborating with your fellow learning area teachers? So generally we do as teachers. I would be part of the English team, and the English team definitely collaborate together. And then lastly, as a whole school, what about improving school culture? If you notice something's not working, are you able to step up and see if you can make a change within the system that you're working in? And that's not easy. Change is not easy, especially when it's whole school change. So that's quality approach. And here we've got more of the learning area. So let's look at the elements at the side. The elements are intellectual quality, quality learning environment, and significance. And if you look down the left side column, we've got deep knowledge and deep understanding, problematic knowledge, higher order thinking, meta language, knowing how we learn, and substantive communication. So a lot of that is what we know about our learning area. And then we've got our quality learning environment, having high expectations, learning intentions, success criteria, ensuring our students are engaged, that they've got support, differentiation, that they can self-regulate, and then they can direct themselves. So they're interested in their own learning. And then the significance of their background knowledge, their cultural knowledge, and yours as well, and how you're going to incorporate inclusivity and connectedness. So that's just a reminder, really. None of that is new to us, but these are the elements that that we think of when we think of quality teaching. Now we're going to move on to our next section, and our next section is all about Aboriginal pedagogy. And I'm hoping that none of this is new to you. So we're going to look at the 8 ways, and we are going to go to some of the classrooms just outside of Cairns, and we're going to look at a couple of videos. Okay. Oh, we're going straight to the video, in fact. Now, if it doesn't work, you need to send me a little message on chat. So I'm hoping that the sound is going to be good. While you watch the video, I want you to write down 3 takeaways, 3 things that you found interesting, that you perhaps didn't realize, or something that you think is going to be useful for you in the future. So 3 dot points while you're watching.
Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islander people are advised that this video contains images and voices of people who may have passed away.
I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we're visiting today, Gungandji country. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. We acknowledge that this land always was and always will be Gungandji country.
Wanjira, welcome to Yarrabah State School.
Over the next 2 segments, we're going to share a snapshot of how curriculum leaders and teachers here at Yarrabah State School are making the Australian curriculum accessible for their learners by providing the curriculum in a way that is contextually and culturally relevant. It's about the continuous improvement in providing access to and the teaching, learning and assessment of the Australian curriculum to ensure success and well-being for all students in an inclusive education system.
So our school is located 57 kilometres southeast of Cairns and caters to a mainly Indigenous population across 3 separate campuses. And that includes kindergarten, primary school and secondary school. So the local language spoken by the people of Yarrabah is Yarri lingo, and this obviously influences our approach to curriculum and pedagogy, particularly as English is an additional language or dialect for most of our learners. When planning for the provision of the whole curriculum, we consider our students and our context. For example, we've decided to provide a learning area approach for the arts. This allows our arts teacher to be flexible in his approach to teaching contextualised art units based on student interests and local events. Provide the languages program through the Language Revival Learner Pathway. Students in years 3 to 10 learn the Gungai language, which has been built alongside Yarrabah's local elders group. This work is led by a traditional owner and languages teacher, Nathan Shriver, and our teaching assistant, Touche Gray. We also have a specialist HASS teacher who, in consultation with one of the school's local teachers, has created contextualised HASS units for the early years that allow us to meet the standard in a context that is relevant to our learners.
When we are planning our year and BAM plans, we consider all of our students and their learning needs and how we can cover all aspects of the achievement standard. We provide time for cohorts to meet to develop these year or BAM plans, and this is done during our collaboration meetings. It's during this process that teachers look at existing C2C assessments and adopt and adapt to suit their learners while maintaining the integrity of the year or BAM plan. We map all of our summative assessments back to the achievement standard, and then we look at those summative assessments and make adjustments to suit our students and our context. In some cases, we adjust the timing of the unit so the topics align, ensuring we can build background knowledge, content and appropriate vocabulary, and it gives the students the opportunity to transfer that knowledge across multiple learning areas. Currently, we have a whole school focus on moderation to build assessment literacy with our teachers. To determine the focus of our moderation processes, we use data to inform our decision making. As a curriculum leadership team, we decided to focus on English, particularly on the receptive mode. We moderate to develop a shared understanding of the curriculum, the pedagogical practices that we know are effective for our learners, and the assessment. I facilitate collaboration meetings with our teachers, and we engage in before moderation activities to plan how our units of work can be modified so that all students can access the Australian curriculum content in a way that is relevant to them. These weekly cohort meetings provide an opportunity for our staff to engage in authentic conversations of how they can modify assessment and unit plans for students in our context. It is also during this process that we identify and highlight key language skills that require explicit teaching for our IEALD students. This is to ensure language awareness is embedded in teaching practices, not standalone.
So we use our collaborations to unpack each unit of work, and then we're able to get a shared understanding of these achievement standards and then select appropriate texts and resources. So for example, when we're planning an English unit, we look at the recommended C2C texts and see which best suit the learning needs of our students. And we also use other appropriate texts in order to compare and use standard Australian English and Yarri lingo. If our students need practice with past tense and plurals, for example, we select texts that enable us to teach these skills.
Providing students with the required curriculum and differentiating teaching and learning to meet all students' needs is our core business. Schools do this by recording their decisions about how curriculum is made culturally and contextually relevant to their learners in their 3 levels of planning, and also by using moderation processes to align curriculum with effective pedagogy, assessment, and reporting. In the next segment, we will look at setting students up for success by ensuring they have access to the curriculum and a variety of strategies to support their learning.
Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islander.
Okay, so let's look at our next slide, which is Aboriginal 8 ways. But before we jump into that, I took some notes. Let's see whether you got anything that I got. So, did you notice that it was a school-wide approach? That it was very context specific. The school is right in that top northern corner, right-hand corner near Cairns. I've never been there. I'd love to go there. It's quite a tropical area. Did you notice that there are a lot of specialist teachers, even though we were looking at primary? They timed what they were going to teach based on so that there was some overlap, so that the students got the opportunity to practice and use the skills that they were teaching. And they planned together. I think that was the biggest thing that we saw there, that the teachers were not on their own, that they planned together. They had a big, their ideas came from backwards planning from the learning outcomes, and then they made sure that their students, and they used the C2C approach, and they planned effectively to cover what the students needed to learn. So they were very much setting their students up for success, and they very much were focused on that end goal of what the students need to understand, know, and be able to do. And we've got one more video to show you after we've looked at this. This is a template which you could use to see if you were planning how you might use land links, how you might use non-verbal responses, symbols and images, how you might deconstruct and reconstruct aspects. Oops, we're on to the next one. Sorry. Same again, take some notes.
Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islander people are advised that this video contains images and voices of people who may have passed away.
I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we're visiting today, Gungandji country. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. We acknowledge that this land always was and always will be Gungandji country. In the last segment, we looked at how Yarrabah State School used their 3 levels of planning and moderation processes to support making the Australian curriculum accessible and culturally and contextually appropriate. In this segment, we're going to discover how a Year 2 teacher sets her students up for success by providing the curriculum in a relevant way.
We use the process for differentiating unit planning to cater for the needs and interests of our students. So when determining the pedagogical practices and teaching strategies for each unit, we consider the nature of the curriculum, the learning and the learner. We align the marking guide with the achievement standards and then look at the content descriptions so we know what we need to teach and assess. We then create student-friendly I can statements and co-construct bump-it-up walls within our classes. This helps students to access and refer to what they've been learning and understand the criteria for success. This allows students to reflect on their work, and it provides us with a clear way to provide feedback on progress and goals for students and their learning. I also plan for adjustments within other learning areas, including maths and science, by looking at the literacy demands of assessment tasks. We provide a range of opportunities for students to be able to demonstrate their understanding. For example, to assess division last term, rather than using a written assessment on paper, students were able to use the Draw and Tell app on the iPads to demonstrate their understanding. To ensure I set my students up for success, I use a number of strategies. So each morning we have soft starts, which enables me and my education assistant to be able to check in with each student and ensure that they're ready for learning. We have a whole class yarning circle where students participate in an acknowledgement of country and then check in using our self-awareness tools. This develops personal and social capabilities. If a student requires further support and they're not yet ready for learning, the education assistant is able to talk to them and offer further support.
How do we check in with Miss Julia, head of Talini? I how Miss Julia how am I feeling and why? When I'm happy, I'm ready to learn.
First, I ask myself, what is it that my students need to be able to know and do? And then I ask, how am I going to be able to get them there? Considering the nature of the learners in my class, I always consider the oral language and prior knowledge required before the written or practical element of each task can be completed. I also need to consider how the students in my class learn and the most engaging way for them to be able to achieve success. I think about what students can say and understand in standard Australian English and where they use Yarri lingo. There are many differences between both languages, including sounds, grammar, vocabulary, and meaning. If students say certain sounds and phrases in Yarri lingo, I plan to explicitly teach them how to say it in standard Australian English and use it in context, then provide multiple opportunities and space practice so students become proficient. So, for example, if my students are talking or writing in past tense, in Yarri lingo, they would say, I been go. So I know to set them up for success when they're writing in standard Australian English, they need to write, I went. When students are writing, I ask them to say it to themselves, a friend, or me before they write it. Students need to be able to speak before they can write, so we provide lots of practice for this to ensure success. My education assistant and I work with students and emphasise that students are smart because they can speak 3 languages here in Yarrabah. Speaking a home language other than standard Australian English is not a deficit. We can use it to strengthen the understanding of the students we teach. We promote a safe and positive learning culture where it's okay for students to speak Yarri lingo, but we also build upon that to teach them how to say things and write things in standard Australian English as well. We strive to teach standard Australian English while maintaining value and respect for the home language of students. This can also incorporate gestures and hand signals to help students have multisensory learning experiences so that they're better able to understand and retain their learning. For example, in phonics, when we're learning a new sound and we're learning how to spell the sound, we'll air write them and make them with our bodies and consolidate these each day. Daily yarning circles allow us to reinforce rehearsed phrases in standard Australian English. Part of phonics and reading instruction incorporates articulation, as some sounds in standard Australian English are not part of Yarri lingo. For me, it's about catering to my students' needs, considering their culture and our shared context.
As a department, we aim to ensure that all students become successful, lifelong learners and active and informed members of their community. There are a number of departmental resources available on the Assessment and Moderation Hub to support schools to plan for providing the curriculum in a relevant way. How are you planning to ensure that all students can access the Australian curriculum in a culturally and contextually relevant way?
Aboriginal people.
Okay, so before we go on with the next slide, I wonder what you wrote down. Does anyone want to share what they wrote? Anything that you noticed? It was nice that they started off with, it's all about setting the students up for success, that it has to be relevant, and then they make it possible. Did you notice that? Did you notice the use of the iPad for draw and tell to show understanding? So the teachers needed to understand what the students knew and what they could do, and the iPad allowed them to draw and tell rather than to write. The soft starts of the day are very primary school focused, but it looked like the students needed that time to explain themselves, to explain, whether they were ready for learning or not. So one boy said, When I'm happy, I'm ready for learning. And so that soft start day is like a touching base and making sure everyone's okay and ready to start the day. Luckily, that classroom teacher also had an EA, so she had the opportunity to support the students if they weren't ready to learn. So that's your soft start, the checking in yarning circle. And I think the principal said that 75% of their school are from Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander backgrounds. So they don't actually have as much diversity in their classroom. So they can really just focus on the 8 ways of learning. Notice that oral language came first. They would speak to a partner, they'd speak with 3 people before they actually had to go through the process of writing. But standard Australian English was what they were aiming for, but at the same time, they wanted that acknowledgement that the students were already language speakers and writers in their own language, and that they were smart. So let's look at differentiation. So differentiation, this shouldn't be new to you, but let's just go over it. There's 4 parts. You can differentiate the content, what you're teaching, the process, the how you're teaching it, the product, how the students are showing what they've learned, what they're producing, and the learning environment. The learning environment is really important in primary schools. We don't seem to have as much control over our learning environment in high schools, unfortunately. I have taken my students out to the library to get books and then go and read under a tree. They always enjoyed just something different, change the learning environments up. Sometimes we might break out of the classroom and some of my students might go and work in the canteen area where there might be sofas and just a different learning environment. So be aware of the learning environment, and if you can change it up, sometimes it does help. So planning the teaching and the learning sequence. Be aware that you need to be inclusive. You need to challenge and give high support and scaffold. Think about the sequencing of what you're teaching. And make sure that your learning activities are modelled by the teacher first, controlled and guided so that your students then are able to do whatever it is you want them to do independently, so that gradual release of responsibility. Ultimately, we want the content knowledge to be accessible to our students. So we start at the end, what do we need our students to know? And then we build towards that. We need to build their knowledge, and we need to give them opportunities for listening and speaking. We touched on this last week slightly, in that our differentiation might be built in or it might be tagged on as you go. I just need to move my screen because I can't see the whole of my screen there. So the phrases we want there is designed in scaffolding and contingent scaffolding. And so this slide's just a follow on from last week. So you might be able to see it in your lesson plan that you've scaffolded, you've planned, and the contingent scaffolding is usually reactive. If something's not working or you see an opportunity to change something, then contingent scaffolding is what you would do. The real focus here for this slide is that we amplify rather than simplify. So we make the learning clear. We don't make the learning easier. So for example, in this image, the brocaded slipper, there's a picture of the slipper. And then there's also annotation, feel silk or brocade embroidery, try on a silk slipper, visit the museum. So it might even be then you also have a silk slipper in the classroom as well. So you've got a picture, you've got a label, you've got a title, you might have the object. So amplify means bring it to life. Present similar information in a variety of ways. Begin with non-technical language and then build towards more academic language. Be aware of the language that you're going to need to use to teach your learning area. If you can use hands-on activities, certainly for our Aboriginal students, they like hands-on, they like to learn through doing, and display key concepts and target language on walls. And that's helpful for all students. This slide explains the zone of proximal development in a different way. Usually we see the zone of proximal development of what the student knows, what the student doesn't know, and it's that zone in between, that zone of challenge. So the engagement, the optimum learning that is occurring with high support and high challenge. So that's what we want, the high support and the high challenge. If the demands are too high, then there's likely to be failure. And if they're too low, boredom and behaviour problems. And also not much learning goes on. So this is quite a good way of explaining the zone of proximal development. Okay, so here's a scenario for you. You've got 28 students in your classroom. 10 are from low-income families, 7 are EALD learners, and 11 are from middle to high-income families. Now, the teacher only uses traditional teaching methods, and she focuses, or he focuses, on written tasks and standard assessment formats, like a reading comprehension test. Is that going to be equitable for all of your students? Is the question. And I'm hoping that your answer is no, Kim. We need to use universal design for learning. Okay, so the traditional teaching methods doesn't encourage equity. Our students won't all be able to access the curriculum based on just the written tasks and the standard assessment format of reading comprehensions. And our low-income families, they struggle with homework, possibly due to lack of resources at home. Maybe our students don't have the internet. Maybe our students don't have access to paper and pens. And quite often my students will say to me, Mrs. Shepherd, I don't have any texters. I don't have any felt tip pens. And, I'll say, do you not have any coloured pencils? So quite often our students don't have resources. I have before had a spare pencil case with, nothing fancy in it, but pencil colours that I have been able to loan out before. But students don't really want to be seen to be different. So that's the challenge. If we could just give everyone out a pencil case and say, off you go, there's your paper, do this at home, that would be fine, but it's not something that we generally do. But I have done it in the past. So loan out and make sure if you've got to create a poster at home that you give the students coloured card from school supplies. So we do have resources at school that we can give and use, but not all students have the same resources. So just be aware of that. So additionally, our EALD students, they struggle to understand complex vocabulary and concepts. And remember, it's not cognitive, it's all to do with language, but they need access to that language first. And our more affluent students, they seem to be more engaged and they have the opportunity to do their homework at home. So we don't have equity in the classroom in this situation. So the teachers notice these disparities, but it's unsure how to address them effectively. So your questions are, you've got 3 questions. What would you practically change? What supports would you add? And how would you support your EALD learners in terms of vocabulary development and language support? So I want you to, if you've got a piece of paper, I wonder if I can do this on the whiteboard. Oh, hold on. Let's see if I can share a whiteboard. I might lose you, by the way. I'm trying to break out into whiteboard mode. I've got start billable hours. No, I've got breakout rooms. You're not very chatty though, so I don't think I'm going to put you in a breakout room because I don't think that you are happy to chat. I don't seem to have in my extras a whiteboard. I used to have a whiteboard. I wonder if that... No, there isn't a whiteboard option. That's a shame. Not to worry. We can do it without. Create on your pen and paper 3 columns. I'll show you a table like this. I'm not sure if you can see it now. And on one column, you're going to write practical changes. So what can you practically change? In your second column, you're going to write how you're going to support the students. And in your third column, you're going to write language and vocab. And I'm going to give you 5 minutes to write down some approaches to better improve this classroom in particular. So what we're looking at is how can we ensure that our 10 low-income students and our 7 EALD students, how can we provide for them practically? How can we deliver the class in a different way? How can we support students at home, or generally support them with whatever they need? And how can we help with language vocabulary? And I suggest you go to, I'm going to just do a pause for you. I suggest you go to the UDL, Universal Design for Learning, and find some ideas from there. Does that sound doable? We're trying to generate some ideas now. When we were face to face this morning, we had a big piece of paper and we had 2 groups and we wrote all over the paper. Online, it's a different setup. So I'm just going to give you 5 minutes to jot down, see if you can get 2 or 3 ideas about practical changes, support, and vocab language. Does that make sense? Just have a little, see what you're saying in the chat to me. All good? Send me a thumbs up if you understand the task. Okay, so I'm going to pause it for a moment and I'm going to come back in 5 minutes. Okay, so we've got 5 minutes to come up with practical changes, support, and language and vocabulary development. So I will see you in 5. Okay, so hopefully that was enough time for you to all have a look at the Universal Design for Learning. If you go to CAST, C-A-S-T, that's where you'll find there's a great infographic, although we do look at it a bit later. The CAST Universal Design for Learning guideline is particularly important when it comes to support, sustaining effort and persistence, language and symbols, and expression and communication. So those are 3 sections there that will really help you. But basically, we need the teacher to change her practice or his practice. And so in terms of the practical change, there's other ways that we can assess our students. So hopefully, instead of the reading comprehension and tests, we might have create a song that explains a certain system in science, or so that you're giving your students the opportunity to demonstrate what they understand and they know, but in a different format. So you might say to your students, if you're particularly good at writing raps, you can write me a rap about whatever it is you're testing them on. Or you might say, if you love writing essays, you can write me an essay. If you want to speak to the camera because you're really good at talking, you can send me a video message. So these are the outputs. So instead of just a test, we're giving our students the opportunity to choose the way they want to show what they know. So, for example, I would love the opportunity to put together a podcast where it might be me and a friend, and we might have a podcast where we have a conversation backwards and forwards, demonstrating what we know about whatever the topic is. The teacher could definitely assess that against the learning intentions and the success criteria. It just means that the teacher has to be open to changing practice. Okay. And it might be that your students need, for example, to say we're doing this now and it's face to face. That suits your learning style. Other students might prefer to work on their own. They might prefer to work with headphones on. You might have students that want to watch a video, like a YouTube clip. They might want to watch it 3 or 4 times before they want to start work. So give them the opportunities to have that input from a variety of different places. So you might have books, you might have magazine articles, you might have websites, you might have all sorts of different resources that help communicate the content that you're teaching, and your students can have the choice to access whatever is useful to them. So they might choose to pick up a book on fish for if you're looking at the ecosystems, or they might prefer to go and watch a YouTube clip. You can give them a variety of choice, but you have to set that up for them in advance. Then in terms of support, you might give them one-to-one support, you might break off into small groups, you might have peer support, you might organize your class so that you've got ability groups. There's lots of different ways you can support your students. And then lastly, our language and vocabulary. Think about your environment. You definitely would have a pin board in the classroom. Even secondary schools have pin boards. Can you put up on the board all the vocabulary that might be needed? So your students, even if they know how to spell ecosystem, it's on the wall ready for them for whatever lesson that you're going to lead that day. So, and it can be for everyone. It doesn't have to be for individual students. Vocabulary lists can be useful to all. Or maybe you're the teacher that always gives a vocabulary list and you get your students to glue it into the back of their exercise books. And so they're building up vocabulary for different contexts and content for your learning area. So I'm hoping that as I was talking there, you were ticking off all the things that you wrote on your columns as well. I think the biggest challenge here is, though, not the students. I think the biggest challenge here is the teacher wanting just to use one way. So our students really quite often are not the challenge. It's us. This is a student that Madison has put into the slides, and she wanted to share the fact that this is actually a student that she taught. He was from Thursday Island, and he was in Australia at a private boarding school. But every holidays he would go home. And she asked him these questions. She said, do you feel like your school differentiates activities or lessons that relate to your cultural background? And his reply was no, they do not include anything around Torres Strait Islander culture. So Thursday Island is a Torres Strait island. She asked, do they encourage you to talk Creole and respect this is your first language? Yes, they respect me speaking in Creole, as I find a lot of the teachers are really interested, but in class it's only English. And lastly, she said, do you feel that teachers treat you differently? And he said, some teachers treat me dumb, and I really hate it. So it's nice to get the feedback from real students, and maybe it helps us reflect on ourselves as teachers going into prac, which I think you're all going into prac quite soon, aren't you? Is it next term? Term 4? Okay, so here's some resources at the top right. You've got a whole list of picture books that are related to your students. So, for example, The Little Refugee by Ando is a really good book. I haven't heard of a lot of the other ones, but I've definitely used The Little Refugee before. And your students will know Ando. He's very popular. So we can build on family stories and experiences. We can use picture books to start up conversations, and we can model English language choices. We can select texts for quality of language and illustrations, and it allows us to acknowledge students' language and culture. So our knowledge and our sensitivity are really important so that we can create safe and supportive environments for our students. And I think looking back at the classrooms in the videos that we just watched, the students seemed to be comfortable within their environments. They seemed happy to be at school, and they seemed confident, with their learning. They looked like they were learning and happy to be there. So here we go, universal design for learning. How are we going for time? Just check the time. 5. We're doing well for time actually today. I think we'll be under. So universal design for learning is an approach that basically gives students choice. It gives students the opportunity to be recognized and seen and heard. So let's have a look at it in more detail.
Hi, Kim. I think the top there's a little window that's blocking the view.
Oh, hold on. Oh, it says low light. Turn edge light on.
Thank you.
No worries. Thanks for telling me. I'm lucky that I didn't lose you then.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you see the text here? We've got some text is in red, some text is in green and blue, some in black. And this is actually a YouTube clip. So we're going to watch a little bit of it, but we're not going to watch all of it. The following slides actually come from this YouTube clip, but we'll watch a little bit. And it's an example of universal design for learning.
In this video, we're going to explore how to support students from EALD backgrounds using Universal Design for Learning. ACARA defines for Australian teachers who students from an EALD background are within their schools. Now let's have a look at the elements of the Universal Design for Learning framework that would be useful for supporting students to access the content descriptions, especially for students from an EALD background. Before we think about how we support our student from an EALD background to access the Australian curriculum, let's have a look at an example from the Australian curriculum content descriptions in Year 6 Australian Curriculum Science. To do this, we need to first define all the cognitive verbs and key terminology to ensure that the curriculum is accessible for all learners. if I had a student from a Spanish background who was new to my class, I would follow this following process to support them to access the Australian curriculum Year 6 science content descriptions. I would first read the following text on deforestation aloud to the class. I would then translate the text on deforestation to Spanish and have a immersive reader or some other form of technology read the Spanish to the class. I would then read the text aloud to the students again in English. This time, when I read aloud the deforestation text to the class, I highlight the nouns, verbs, and objects different colours. This is functional grammar. This supports all the learners to understand where the language features fit within the text. Now that we've highlighted all the nouns, verbs, and objects, different colours within the text, we read aloud the text again to the class, this time highlighting the key terminology. For example, deforestation, farm, ranches, or urban use, and tropical rainforest. Now we read aloud the text again, this time focusing on the term deforestation. I might ask the class if anyone knows what deforestation is. I pretend like I don't. If no one in the class knows what deforestation means, we could bring up Google Images, put the word into Google Images and have a look at the images so we can come up with an idea of what we mean by deforestation. We would then follow the same process, having the text read to us in Spanish using technology. We'd also look at images of deforestation in Spanish using Google Images. I would now read aloud the text again in English to the class. After we read through the text, we start the process of using the text and the images to create a Freya model in English. We would also follow the same process in Spanish, creating a Freya model in Spanish. Both completed Freya models would then be put on the classroom wall or sent to the students' laptops so they can refer to it on a later basis. Now let's come back to the Australian Curriculum version 9 content description from Year 6 Science. Students investigate the physical conditions of a habitat and analyse how the growth and survival of living things is affected by changing physical conditions. Once again, we define all the cognitive verbs and key terminology to ensure that the content descriptions that are being taught are accessible for all learners. Before the teacher starts modelling out the content descriptions for the students, the teacher reads aloud the text on deforestation again aloud to the students in English, and they look at the images and the Freya model that they have created. This process is also followed by having the technology read aloud the text in Spanish to the class, as well as looking at the images of deforestation and the Freya model. The teacher and the students look at the text on deforestation, the images, and the Freya model, and have a talk about what are the physical conditions they see in the rainforest. These are added to the scaffolded table. Notice at the top of the table where I have the headings, they are also supplemented by Spanish to support our students to access the learning process. The teacher and the students then read through the text on deforestation aloud in English. The technology reads aloud the text in Spanish again. The students and the teacher look at the images of deforestation, and they also look at the Freya models that are being created. Then collaboratively, the teacher and the students analyze the effects of deforestation on the growth and survival of animals within the rainforest. This is done by creating 2 mind maps, one on the effect on the growth of animals within the rainforest and one mind map on the survival of animals within the rainforest. The students and the teacher then connect lines between the 2 mind maps where there are connections between the information. The students and the teacher then create a Venn diagram of the similarities and differences of the growth and survival of animals caused by deforestation.
So I'm just going to pause it there. I'm just going to pause it there. If you want to watch the full video, I think it's about 10 minutes long. But basically, I thought that was quite a good way of showing you the step-by-step repetition and the real focus in on vocabulary in particular. I should imagine that after all of that rigorous reading and translating and using the Freya model, I wonder if the Freya model is new to you. Freya spelled Freyer. Is it something that maybe you would use in your classroom? It certainly does focus students in on different aspects of the text. So this would be a real focus for your EALD learners. Focus on the language, the verbs and the nouns, and maybe you would give these words. You'd pre-teach the words before you actually look at the text. Bringing your visuals in really helps. Like, if the students weren't sure about deforestation, they certainly are by the end of that 3rd picture, and it can be quite hard-hitting visually to see what, the forest looks like, green and lush, and then totally brown. And that's your Freya model there, that template. So think about the templates. It might be something that you might incorporate into your plan for your assignment 2. And lastly, we're actually doing really well for time here. We've still got 50 minutes actually. This is some examples from last year, which I think we did share with you in the last session. So you've got your examples of warm-up, middle and higher order thinking, and you've got your visual aspects here. You've got your food chains, linking, and the organizing, the 3 sections there, very clear for your students. What Madison hasn't given you is the annotations. What's changed? So these are some of the worksheets that she had sent to her last year, just without the annotations. And then you've got your resources for differentiation. Now, all of these slides that follow, these were in last week's slides. And these are all parts of, ways of differentiating. And you might have some of these differentiation ideas within your lesson, within your lesson plan. Sorry, your research, your resource sheet. And we've flown through them today. I think it's because we haven't done as much talking, but we can now have some conversation about the task, perhaps. Have you started? Do you have any questions about the task?
Hi, Kim.
Hi.
Yeah, I have some questions related to assignment.
Yep.
Yeah, like when we're doing, like when we're making changes in the worksheet, how we
Yep.
supposed to insert the worksheet? Is it a screenshot or we are just editing the Word document?
So no, it would be a screenshot. So you've got your original worksheet.
Yeah.
Remember, I think last week I said, make your worksheet really, really wordy and very boring. So don't find a really good quality one. And then you're creating it yourself. So you might take it and then you might cut bits out of it, reshape it, add something at the beginning. Yeah, and then you might have created it in a Word document, so it can just be the next page. So you might give me the original, the one you've adapted for one of your students, and then the one that you've adapted for your second student. And they might be on 3 different pages, or they could be on one. I suppose as long as I can see it, if I zoom in, so I can see the changes. But you do need to have it small enough so that you can write your annotations around the side. So you might say, I've taken out this section because it was too wordy. I've added a picture. I've added subtitles. I've added an extra YouTube clip. So all your annotations would be around the outside. So you're right, you might create it, but then you might make it just a screenshot so you can annotate it around the outsides. Does
And
that
the
help?
annotations and the part two is the same, like reflective justification and annotation in the assignment.
So the annotation, I mean, you can see this bit here. So for example, this might have been part of this task sheet here, and the person might have taken out some of it and I don't know what they might have done differently, but they might have added some extra bits in.
And
So
this is what we explaining in annotation, what we changed and why we changed.
yeah, that's right. It's the changes. So, you might annotate, I put the example in, I added the words to the pictures. Yeah, tell me which bits you've changed. Is this your original? And then this is your adapted one. We should be able to see the differences. And so basically I just compare and contrast it.
Yeah, thank you.
No worries.
And also checking, like when we're doing, like for example, I'm taking example of a low socioeconomic student background, and he's also lower in grades.
So sorry, I didn't quite hear
So
the last bit.
he's from socioeconomic background, like low socioeconomic background,
Yeah.
and he's also like not matching the grade standard. He's below grade standard. So
So yeah, if you've decided that he's working below grade, then obviously you're going to do some differentiation and some scaffolding, and you're going to make it hopefully. So you're going to give him lots more support. Basically,
yep,
he might have at the side of the page, if it was deforestation, all the keywords at the side. He might just have 3 sections instead of 5. So you might
yep.
reduce some of the cognitive load for him. Yep.
Yeah, this like what else we can do for socioeconomic? We can reduce the load and we can give them support so meet the standard. Is there something else that we can do?
You
We
might
can make
add.
the worksheet that is not required any technology or books, so though he don't need to buy anything.
Yeah,
Something.
so you'd make sure maybe you have a supply of books in the classroom. So they might not be able to go home and do research, but you might have lots of books in the classroom. So if, say, for example, the one we've got in front of us, seaweed, fish, and dolphin. So you're looking at I presume this is your food groups. I'm not a science teacher.
Yeah,
Or food chains, yep. You might have this example, and then if you might have pictures already provided. Whereas some of your students, they might go home and they might get online and they might create their own images. You might provide the images. Um, other students might go and find their own online. So you might say, here are some resources for you. Here are some pictures that you might want to take. You might want to give them a pencil case with some glue, scissors, so that they could cut out the pictures at home. Yeah, you might put a YouTube video in that they could access at school. But yeah, they might access the books at school as well.
Yeah. Oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah. Did someone else got their hand up?
Hi Kim.
Hi.
Hi. I just had a couple of questions.
Yep.
For the base worksheet, I saw that in our discussion board, Jinky had said that we can use Twinkle or some other resources to find
Yeah.
like a base worksheet. Is that all right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Okay.
Twinkle's a great place to get a base worksheet. So remember,
And
yeah, remember you're looking for like a really awful one.
yeah, yeah,
So you don't have to come up with create something from new, but you might have a reading comprehension with 10 questions, and you might add a bigger title, you
yeah.
might add some pictures, you might have vocabulary at the side, and you might only have 3 questions. Or you might then say, create a Freya model, like the model that we used for the
Yeah.
deforestation. So you just make it better really with your student in mind.
And for example, I found a resource on Twinkle and it's too good. Can I edit it to make it look worse and then make it better?
You could do. Yeah, you could. Yeah,
That's
take
right.
that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Take all the pictures
Um,
out.
yeah, and then put it back. Put something else that makes it better for the student. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the sort of thing that I used to really enjoy doing for my students because, you never find a worksheet that's fabulous, but you might think, oh, I like that bit of the worksheet and that bit. So I might use the text,
Yeah.
but I'm adding pictures and subtitles yeah. And now that you can add technology, we can now embed our technology into our slides as well, which, feel
Mm.
free to add the technology as well.
And also, for example, you said we can, for example, have some books for the students to use and stuff in the classroom. But this is
Yeah.
not something we're adjusting in the worksheet itself. Do we
No.
just put it in justifications then, or do we
Or
annotate
you
it
might
somewhere?
even have it at the top. Have a look in the class resource box,
Okay, okay.
and find some books on, well, this one is, which is the one we've got here, food chains.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or you might say, go and have a look at the resources. You might have provided all of these pictures of food chains for your students that they're
Mm,
just there. You've already photocopied them. You've already found them for them, but then they might go and choose them. So this is seaweed, fish, and dolphin. Have a
mm,
rummage through the resources, and you might say, you see that there's a blank under here. You've
yeah.
provided them with extra
Space.
things. Yeah, they're going to
Yeah.
cut them out and stick them on.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
so you
then,
provide the visuals.
is the word count counting the worksheet words as well? Or is
I
it
don't think so, no.
okay? Okay, that's
Yeah,
fine. All right, thank you so much.
no worries. Anyone else? I'll just have a look at the chat and see what's in the chat. Okay. So no, you don't need to create the base worksheet, but if it's too good, yeah, just one original worksheet and then you'll show me your yeah, because you probably want to start with something. So for example, if we were going to start with this one here, this worksheet here, there's 3 parts to it. You might decide that your students you might need to extend it. So these 2 lines wouldn't be good enough if you had a student that needed extending who was gifted and talented. You might decide actually 2 lines is not enough to respond. Uh, can you see here that you might want them to create their own one like this? So that's the worksheet, and then you might add this.
Uh,
That might be your original worksheet, and you have added this extra bit where the students have to glue on the pictures.
hey Kim, I'm
Hey,
sorry.
it's all right?
Just have a question.
Yeah,
The in the assignment you have asked like select a base worksheet. Where
yeah.
can we find that?
So I think in last week's slides, we had I think I added on Twinkle. So Twinkle is one good website. There's quite a lot of free ones on Twinkle. Um, Teachers pay teachers is another one where you can buy worksheets for like $1 or some of them are free. You can just Google them. So you could just do a Google search for free worksheets to teach whatever it is that you're teaching, and you'll find lots online, lots and lots of them. Twinkle's always a good place to start. Some of them you do need to buy. Yeah, just have a look online. There'll be loads.
Thank you
I
so
don't know
much.
if Madison's put any on Blackboard. Has she mentioned where to get some resources from?
Yeah, she did mention in the slides, workshop slides.
Yeah,
There's 5 to 6 resources. We can go there and have a look.
brilliant. So was that this week's workshop?
Last week workshop.
Last week's workshop. So whoever needed, whoever asked that, go to last week's workshop and there's some examples there. Remember, the base one doesn't have to be good anyway. Because you're going to make it better. You're going to add to it.
Kim,
Yep.
just a quick question. Is there any specific criteria or level of worksheet that we have to choose, or we can choose any that we like?
Really, you're looking for one that links to your learning intentions and your success criteria for a lesson. And I would always choose to use one that you're possibly going to be able to practice with when you go on prac. So if you're heading on prac and you think you've got to teach something in particular, find a worksheet and yeah, see if you can improve it. And then try it out in class. When you get to school, definitely work smarter. But I wouldn't spend lots of time creating the base one. Spend all the time creating the better one. Because then you can look at it and you can go, well, this isn't good because it doesn't have titles, it doesn't have subtitles, it doesn't have vocabulary, it doesn't have digital technologies embedded in it. You might also have Google Slides attached to your worksheet as well. So it can be multimodal worksheet.
Oh, good. Thank you.
No worries. Anyone else got any questions? Otherwise, you can spend some time having a browse through some worksheets, maybe share some worksheets with each other. Do you want a breakout room where you can chat to each other?
Hi, Kim.
Hi.
Hi. Actually, I had a doubt. Um,
Yeah.
I made a worksheet by my own
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't know how to find it. So
Mm-hmm.
I made a base worksheet, which is not that perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But then I made some changes in the same worksheet in the same Word file, and I
Yeah.
put a comment box around the Word file as the annotation. So is it fine or is it not fine?
Um, there definitely needs to be. So when I look at it, I'll see the three worksheets. Whether they're on separate pages, it doesn't really matter. But I should really see that you've thought about the individual student that you have adjusted it for. So if that student, say, for example, I can't remember the students off by hand. Can you remember any of the students? I think they're on the other slides. I haven't got them in front of me. Can anyone remember the scenarios? Or actually, you had to make them up yourself, didn't you? You were only given a
Yeah,
very,
we are given five options and we have to make
yeah,
two out of
really,
them.
really, yeah, your student's very much your own. You've created your own perfect student.
Yeah,
Yeah, so as long as I can see that you have tailor-made this worksheet for your specific student and you've justified why you've made the changes. So it might be that your students really needs help with the complex vocabulary, so you've got a key on the side, or your student probably needs to re-watch the video, so you've got the video link at the top, or your student really is a visual student, so you've given your student slides that are embedded. Yeah, as long as you've explained why you've made the changes and you can
yeah. So
justify them.
I understood that, but I was just confused about the format because I I made a very simple Word file because the base worksheet should be wordy and not that interesting. I
Yeah,
remember those two things about the base worksheet. So I
yeah,
made it in the Word file in the same page, and
yeah,
then I made some adjustments. I put some photos and something,
yeah,
and I annotated around it with the comment box. So it's all in a single Word file.
yeah.
First, it's like the base worksheet, then I introduced my two learners, and then I made two differentiated worksheets for both the learners. So I don't have any videos on or any posters and anything fancy like that. So is
Yeah.
it fine?
Yes, I mean, it should be. I'm just saying that you can embed technology as well. I know with some of the ones that we looked at before, we had embedded some technology. You might want to, going back to this slide, you might want to give the template for the Freya model template. And so that might be part of your resource is that, now that you've done this, you're going to fill out this Freya model instead of writing a paragraph. Your original one might have been, quite um, quite basic. It might have been describe deforestation. What is it? Write a paragraph about deforestation. Whereas, if you then changed it to become create the Freya model template, that definitely gives your students the opportunity to put in some pictures. And it might be you give them all the information and they just have to put it into the boxes. So
Just
really, it sounds like you're all on the right track.
no, but just wondering, like, can we do comments instead of doing boxes annotation, like word feature? We can just comment, and whenever who gonna open that, he can view the comments instead of, or it should be like in a boxes or something annotations.
I think I haven't got the examples here of the annotations because she took the annotations out, but the annotations are, so it might be, there's 4 numbers here. The annotation might be on this one. I reduced the number of animals for Tim because 4 was enough, but 10 was too much. So you've taken out the how much that you could annotate. Can you see on the side there? It might be I've added this example so my students can see the beetle ate the plant. Or you might say for some of my students, I've given them the words and they've got to glue them in instead of write them in. Yeah, as long as around the outside you've annotated what you've changed, so it's clear. Does that make sense? So you can't see the annotations. We really actually did need the annotations. The annotations are the bits that's explaining the changes you've made. And then obviously your justification. So if this was the first one, there's 3 parts to it. But this person may have just said, right, this is the example. I've taken just one section.
Hi, Kim.
Hi.
So do we need to stick with the wording as well in that part? As it mentioned over there, 50 to 100 words.
Yeah, so the annotations are on top of it. You're just sort of like drawing arrows and explaining the bits that you've changed and why. And then, the written part is separate. Yeah. So yeah, you're not writing your justification on here. You're just pinpointing, or, basically it's your way of showing me what you've changed and why. So the annotations are just very simple.
Hi, Miss Kim. I have a
Hi.
question as well.
Yeah.
So I'm doing commerce subjects, so business management and enterprise. So
Yeah.
in that case, maybe my activity would be a case study. Am I thinking right? And
You do, yeah.
okay, all right. I was just a bit confused. All
Yeah,
right.
so I mean, you could have a case study, but I think you actually have to, the case study would have to be on your A4 piece of paper.
Mhm.
And maybe you've got questions to do with your case study, but you've got to then make that accessible to your 2 specific students. So it might be that the case study is not accessible to them. It might need to be less wordy, or it might need to be more visual. You might need to add vocabulary. You might need to add some videos as background knowledge. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
No worries.
It seems easy, but it seems more hard this time.
Do you
But
think? I think it's quite
confused.
creative. I quite liked the idea of take a really boring lesson
Yeah, but
plan.
it took time, and it is hard. Um,
Yeah.
I'm feeling confused in this time. Yeah.
Oh, so what is your learning area that you're focusing on, and do you have a topic in mind?
Um, uh, uh, my learning area is technology, and
Yeah.
I'm still confused for my topic. I haven't decided yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, last time I was deciding, but I thought I need to attend one more week. Then maybe
Yeah.
it comes to my mind what need to do like next. Yeah,
Yeah. So you
yeah.
might Google some worksheets, so digital technology word sheets for, I don't know, I'm thinking year 8, year 7, creating passwords.
I'm going for, and I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you.
No, no.
Uh, I would go for material technology actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there is more. I mean, you can use the different things to make a material, something like you want to create something. So that's what I would go toward that.
Yeah. So have a Google and see what worksheets are out there is a really good starting point. And then you can look at the worksheet and think, would that work for my student? How would I need to change it? Is it
Mm,
accessible to them? Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yeah. So maybe start with a worksheet and work backwards. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was going to try and find some, but I'm not sure if I'd lose you if I go to, have I lost you? Where are you all? No, I've still
no,
got you. So
yeah,
if I was to go to my browser and oh, now I might lose you. If I lose you, then you're on your own. So let me say worksheets for
digital.
year 8, say. So then if you go to images, for example, you might have, let's have a look at this one. Digital literacy terms. So can you see how I was able to get a worksheet without a problem. I just had a look, match the terms to the definition: digital footprint, privacy, phishing, cloud storage, password hygiene, digital well-being. So this is very wordy, isn't it? So would you keep, if this was your first part of your lesson, would you keep all of that? Would you embed a little video first that goes through all of this vocabulary? Would you add some pictures instead of this text? So keeping online accounts secure by using strong, unique passwords and updating them regularly. So is that too wordy? So these are the sorts of things you would look at. Here you've got digital literacy and you've got lots of icons. So would you ask your students to do something with that? Then you've got match the term to the definition. So that's same, but different. Could you get some images in there? Or maybe you'd have fill in the blank. So if you post a photo online, it becomes part of your what, and it can be seen later. So obviously it'd be part of your digital footprint. Consider what happens to your information when you share it online. So these ones are very, very wordy. And then you've got here a reflection, and 2 sentences describe how understanding these digital literacy terms can help you make safer and healthier choices online. So these are all very wordy. Any of these could be your base worksheet, and then you'll show me how you've adapted it to meet the needs of your students. Does that make sense? But so when I did the search, I literally just put in year 8 digital technologies. I had to have a good idea of what I wanted to teach first. So this is called Cura Plan, and you've got lots of free resources here. So you've got free worksheets and printables, you've got free slides and images. It looks like it's probably quite a good website to start with. This one shows you can browse from, you might want to go to year 9, and you've got lots and lots of worksheets there. Digital well-being quiz. Yep, there's lots here. Discrete versus continuous variables. So there's a good bit of maths there. You might, I'm sure that you could make these better. Understanding variables, which of these is a discrete variable? It gives you an idea of some of the content here as well. Then you've got some real world scenarios. So it might be just even this part 3, you might say, right, I'm going to take that and I'm going to adapt this part 3.
Hi, Miss
Classifying
Kim.
variables. Hi.
Yeah, sorry to jump in. So we don't have to, it's not a must for us to select grade 11 and 12, is it? We can select a lower grade. That's
Yeah.
fine.
Stay away from year 11 and 12. Yes, it's
Yeah.
it's just 7 to 10. Yeah. Because
Okay, thank
year
you.
11 and 12 students, yeah, they're working on courses. So their curriculum is very different. Yep. So this one, I would say you could get any resources from this free website here. So curaplan.com. And they're pretty boring, aren't they? They're clear, but you could definitely improve these ones here. And there seems to be a lot of them on there, free in Curaplan, ready to print. Or you could get AI to generate you one. You could get AI to generate a really boring one, and then you could create the one yourself. But yeah, have a play, have a look and see what you think. I'm just going to go back to the chat and see if there's any other questions. If my original worksheet is an image, a screenshot from a textbook, is it acceptable for my differentiated versa to also be submitted as annotated images? I don't know if you're allowed to use a textbook. You'd have to ask Madison that one. I'm not sure. Because I think you have to choose a worksheet. Yes, Anjali?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Hi.
First of all, I have a question regarding can I choose the year level 7 and for the
Yeah,
learn
definitely. Yep. Year
yes,
group
and
7,
for the
7 to 10.
learning area is like a English in reading and responding to literature text.
Is that your learning area that is your major?
Yes, my learning areas are English and IT, so I took the English one.
Right. Be careful with English. It's very specific. It's very, as an English teacher, you could get it very wrong. Um, is it pure English, or are you planning on teaching English as a second language? Because there's totally different curriculum. So just,
Yeah, English is my second language.
yeah. So are you planning to teach English as a first language or as a second language?
As a second language, even I got the first placement is also in English.
Yeah, yeah. Be careful with English, because usually English teachers in high school will have English as their first language. So they
Okay.
wouldn't, yeah, it would be very unusual to have a second language learner teach English um, curriculum to say year 7 and 8s, unless it was a special class for English students that have
Okay.
English as a second language. So I would just be very careful of the content because it's very content heavy.
Yeah, I can do like that, but
Yeah,
it's just my mother tongue is another language, so I am talking about the English is my second language. Otherwise, I am influent in English. No worries about that.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
s-
Choose
s-
whichever you feels best. I would say that digital technologies would probably be easier for you.
okay, so I have a English process technology as well here for the learning area. So it would be better that choosing ICT rather than English, right?
I think, in terms of the cognitive load, and the content specific nature of English, I think that digital technologies would definitely be easier to do.
Okay, and for the learner profile, there is the mention like a learner one and learner two. So we can give any name, like there is no mandatory which name we should have to take. We can take any name for the
Yeah, you can
students.
choose. Yeah, you can choose anyone, make any name, make that student yours. Yeah, really bring that student to life. So, that we really understand that student's needs.
Yes, and they mention the learner type. For the learner type, I will have to be listed. But I don't understand which list I need to use for the learner type.
Is it not in the task sheet?
Yeah, that's a mention in a task sheet. There is a under the learner profile. For the learner profile, there are two learners and the learner types that's included from the below list.
Yeah. Yep. So you choose two, and your worksheet. One worksheet is for one of your students, and the other worksheet is for your other student. So they're two different learners. You'll have two different worksheets created for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and for the worksheet that words will not counting in a total word file.
And no, I think it's not the resources aren't counted. It's just your justification. Yeah.
Yeah, and for the base worksheet, we can make a worksheet in the word file. It should be fine.
I would just get one that's already been created and then just make it better because you don't want to spend lots and lots of time creating your own worksheet. It's best just to just get a worksheet from, Curaplan and then adapt it would be better.
Okay, okay, that should be fine.
Yeah, because there's loads out there and it's good for you to see what worksheets are out there. And quite often worksheets don't work for everyone. That's the whole point, is that, our worksheets are very generic.
Yeah, and should I have to mention annotations behind the worksheet?
Yeah, so usually the annotations go around the outside. So it's just a bit of a way of where you basically draw an arrow to something and say, I added an extra title here. So my students, are clear. And I've added images here to support the vocabulary. And I've added this. Yeah, you're just pointing. It's a bit like pointing to the worksheet and just explaining the changes that you've made and why.
Okay, okay, all right. So basically, I will have to choose everything by myself, which is just on a random.
So there's loads of research. Yeah, yeah, because it'll be based on what your student needs. So if your
Okay.
student is working below level and won't be able to access the language, maybe you take some of the language out, or maybe you make it bigger, or you highlight like I do, highlight in bold the key words. Or like we looked at the universal design for learning, the teacher there highlighted the nouns and the verbs, and the places. He highlighted certain aspects. So highlighting can help as well. So it all depends on what your student needs.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank
No
you.
worries. Okay, so we've got about 15 minutes. I'm just looking through the chats to see if I've answered. Um, So yeah, just make sure it is a worksheet because you are required to have a worksheet. And it would just be one A4 page, the base worksheet. Yep, so that's one page. And then you create another page, you create two more A4. Basically, worksheets are A4 size, an A4 piece of paper size. Um, yep, the year levels 7 to 10. Confirm whether differentiator can be submitted as annotated images, and if so, are they included? Yeah, so they're not included in the word count. Yes, so basically what you can do is once you've created your resource, you could just reduce it down so that you can annotate it around the outside. So like do a page snip and then put it back in your page and annotate it around the outside, if that makes sense. I think there were some good examples in the previous slides. Were they in last week's slides or even in week one slides? Go back through your slides. I think there's some really good examples that Madison's given you already. Okay. No more questions? Remember to read your the task sheet really carefully so that you know exactly what you need to do. And remember to look at your rubric. Make sure that, remember, I can only mark you on what's in the rubric, what the task sheet asks you to do, and then I have to use just the rubric. So I look at the rubric and then I look for evidence and I'm matching it up, hopefully to the HD section. So definitely look at the rubric and look at the HD section, see what it says, because that's obviously what I'm marking it against. So if there aren't any more questions, go back to your task sheet and just double check that you've got everything, double check your rubric, and maybe get started. And then next week's our last week. So last week, you'll probably almost be finished by then. It'll be a last chance next week for you to ask me some more questions. I can't look at any of your work, but yeah, you can definitely, might have different questions by next week. You probably will have done some of your changes by then. Yeah, so somebody said, where can we find the worksheets? I'd definitely go to Cura Plan, the one I've got on screen right now, and pick any of those. Any other questions? If you've chosen the Aboriginal student, remember, use the 8 ways that we looked at today. And you know, things like if you were to choose an Aboriginal student, you definitely have some oral aspects, some spoken tasks in there, and definitely some images and symbols, because we've got some really clear ideas about how Aboriginal students learn. Okay, so if I was you, spend the next 10 minutes having a look at CuraPlan. So it's curaplan.com. Go to this bit here and have a look at the free resources. Go to the worksheet section, choose your year group, or maybe choose your subject, and just have a browse through all of the sheets. And all of these are free. Look, you've got multiplication worksheets, addition worksheets if you're maths. You have got you've got free clip art for teachers. You've got some teaching slides there. You've got reading comprehensions. So you could start with a reading comprehension and yeah, so look, Pacific Rim story comprehension. Start with a reading comprehension and then make it better. You've got multiple choice here. You've got some images. You know, you could definitely start with one of these and yeah, make it better. So there's one last question. Let's have a little look. Oh, I'm glad I helped. I'm not getting better with my MacBook. I'm not loving it. I might have to give it to my daughter. I'm not sure she'd love it either. Oh, thank you for your kind words. Okay, I'm going to leave you and I'm going to have some dinner if you're good. We've got 10 more minutes, but I'd say spend 10 minutes looking at this website. I've not used it before, but I think it would be a great starting place for you. Okay, so everyone's got the website there, curaplan.com. And yep, just take a worksheet and then really think about your student. And look, they're all free. So that's great. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing now. And if you're all good, I'm going to say I'll see you next week on the beach, obviously. Bye, everybody.